So good evening, guys. I hope you can still all hear me okay. What we're going to be obviously focusing on tonight is your NSS. I know I did do that recording beforehand and that spoke to the questions, but I'm obviously going to go through them again with you guys now. And please, as we are going through it, please feel free to ask as many questions as you want. Just make sure that you rather ask them as and when we get to everything, so that you are not thinking about it later on, or as we get to that point. I'd rather cover it then, so that you are having the information at the right time, rather than thinking about it at the end and then you've lost context or whatever. So please either put your hand up if you want to talk it out, if you're battling to put what you want to ask into words, or you can obviously type it in the chat. Okay, everyone with me? Everyone hear me okay and all that before we get going? Cool. Okay. Even if what I'm saying makes sense to you guys, or what have you, if I say is everything okay, please just give me a thumbs up, for no other reason that I just want to make sure everyone can still hear me when when we're sitting in silence. I don't know then if you guys have heard me, and I don't want anyone sitting there again with questions. That is always the worst thing possible. Okay. Thank you. You guys are awesome. Right. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the actual assignment, I just want to speak to your integrity and your referencing. Okay, so I hope you guys, when you've been doing your integrity declarations, you've seen the differences that are there this year, where it is speaking to AI and the use of AI, and it's highlighting that you actually have to declare any use of AI. Now, guys, I'm not against AI at all. I understand that it's there, it can be a very useful tool, but if you use it, you have to put screenshots of your prompt words and the entire answer that it gives. The referencing is not always correct. You do need to ask for permission. So please just use it sparingly. Only use it if you think it's going to add, not if you think it's going to, or if you think it's going to take more time than it's worth, then rather just spend that bit of time uh, doing the research yourself, writing it yourself, then putting yourself in a situation where you are panicking because what you have done is set yourself up for spending more time trying to decipher what AI has said. So just like I say, if you're going to use it, I'm not completely against it, but to me at this stage for an assignment, and especially, it's a lot of work using AI, which I don't think you guys want to be spending all that time doing that. But again, it is your call. But please just make sure at the end of your assignment that you do an addendum with the screenshots of everything, just for transparency, because normally obviously with a website or a journal or a textbook, I could technically go up and look everything up, where with AI I don't know what your prompt word is and I don't know its response, because I've put the same response into question into AI, just in different weeks, and I've got different answers. So it just depends on what what it feels like answering that day and what sources it feels like using that day. So again, just be cautious. I'm just so hyper aware that people are trying to use it thinking it's going to save them time, when in fact it actually stresses you out and adds more time with all the deciphering and what have you. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. So again, I'm not being an old school person going, don't use it, You know, it's cheating. It's not if it's used correctly. Okay. Then in terms of your referencing, um, please, I cannot stress this enough, rather over-reference than under-reference. And why I say that is if you are questioning whether or not something should be referenced, if you're going, should I, shouldn't I, chances are then that you should be, because it means that you have sourced content from somewhere. Even with the apartheid stuff, I know you've learned it in school. I know that some of you have lived through it. I understand it's your known experience, but you have to find a source for that information from somewhere to support what you are presenting. And that referencing is critically important. You cannot just reference at the end of the paragraph. Every time a thought, a piece of theory is taken from somewhere, reference it. Make sure you are constantly referencing it so that you are showing your understanding that it is coming from someone else. Okay, even if it's your own thought, go and find a source that supports it. Okay, so I know I've had a couple of, or more than a couple of questions in terms of how to reference the textbook. So in terms of your full reference list, this is the correct referencing. It's in your module outline. You can literally copy and paste it as I have, and that is the correct full reference for the end of the in your reference list at the end of your assignment. For the in-text, all right, so I know I've had a couple of you ask this as well, is the correct in-text is age 2018, or if you have to do the full brackets, age 2018, okay? Some of you asked if Edge Learning Media is correct. If you went and did Edge Learning Media, I am not going to penalize you. You are referencing the correct book. If you did Dancer et al., I would not penalize you. You are still using the editors. The reason why Edge is different from your traditional books, sorry, not the editors, the authors. The reason why Edge is different is because they do not attribute chapters to their authors. So you don't know which authors wrote which book, chapters. So in that, we refer to the editors rather than the writers, the authors. The reason why I know this is I'm one of the authors in the book. So I do have that additional insight, and the correct referencing for it is Edge. So if you use Edge, if you use Edge Learning Media, if you use the full authors, I'm not going to penalize you in any of those three scenarios, but the most correct one is the Edge 2018. Are we all on the same page? Does that make sense? So those of us that wrote the book don't get the extra props every time someone writes an assignment. So like I say, it's only because I've got that extra insight that I know. Okay. Right. Any other, and then also, sorry, before I get into the questions, thanks, Robin. Yeah, it was my baby. There's two textbooks, but you guys only use the one now because it was a bit much, you guys having to use two textbooks for one module. So the other thing I just wanted to say to you guys is that please, again with the referencing, rather over-reference. I don't want to be minusing 5 and 10%. Thanks, Nicoletta. I don't want to be minusing 5 and 10%. To me, it's the biggest waste ever because it just means that your marks get knocked straight away, and I don't want that. So rather add in referencing everywhere you possibly can, every time you grab some theory, obviously not your discussion, but any bit of theory, reference it. And if you see minus 5 or 10%, please, and you're unsure why you got that, go look at the referencing page where it shows you what a minus 5% is, what a minus 10% penalty is. I will, on your script, write referencing, underline things, star things. I will comment on your scripts so that you can get that feedback for your POE. You will never get a blank script back from me because that's pointless. Okay, just seeing. When we sign the declaration, do we send the declaration? No. So you don't have to. So when you do that declaration, you guys are only doing it on VC Learn. So you'll obviously see it on your front page as I've got here. There is the declaration there, and it goes on to the next page. This is because some students and some modules, they are handing in paper assessments. So they have to pull this off and then sign it. Because you guys are submitting digitally, you don't have to do that. You just have to do the one on VC Learn per module. Yeah, Karen, there's not many A Middletons in South Africa, at least. Overseas, there's many. Okay. What else in terms of referencing? Thanks for sharing that, Taylor. I just saw that. Saw that you shared it. Shared the referencing on the WhatsApp group. I was checking on my phone. Buzzed. Okay. Then if there's no questions on the referencing or all that, let's get into, actually before I get into the questions, just to remind you guys, 1.5 line spacing, okay, you need 11 or 12 size font. It can be Arial, Times New Roman, or Calibri, okay, normal margins, okay, and no borders, okay. That is all for marking purposes. Those things need to be present. Guys, that 1.5 line spacing is a godsend for marking in terms of being able to write and give you feedback, and also in terms of giving our eyes a break from solid text. So please make sure you do that. Also make sure you make use of multiple paragraphs, okay? Rather have break down big chunks, so rather have, say, 2 to 4 paragraphs a page, somewhere around there. I know Doug likes full page paragraphs, different modules, different approaches, different ways of structuring thought processes. So, just stick with what you need for Journ. Okay. The other thing is you need a cover page with your name, student number, module, all that. I cannot stress how important that is, because we get students submitting the wrong assignments and the wrong modules, and I will be marking it, go, this makes absolutely no sense, this is not line 0. If I can see right from the get-go you've submitted the wrong one, then action can be taken. And then also make sure you have a contents page breaking down, what page each question is on, because there's multiple questions for this, and then obviously your reference list. Okay, so that's all the admin-y stuff. Any questions in terms of the admin? I know this is stuff you've all heard before, but at the same time, it would be remiss of me if I just assumed knowledge, the whole ask you me thing. No one needs to be a donkey here. Okay. Right, so let's look at the question. Is it like a cheeping noise, Chantal? Like a cheeping noise? Like a mini neat noise. Okay, there is an airplane going over. So it's probably that. What is going on with this sound on this laptop? I'm sorry. Sorry, no, I've got a duck who had a duckling today. Okay, that is a problem. Taylor, both get accepted. Let me see if I put my headphones in. If the sound is better for you guys. Tell me, is that better? Is it clearer? All right, I'm going to get my tablet at the same time, and I'm going to log onto that and see if the sound is better, because I'm in a dead silent room and I don't know why it is sounding like wind. Sorry, I'm just running across the house quickly. Okay, sorry guys, I just obviously want the sound quality to be decent, and I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, I'm going to carry on just talking about the background stuff while I get logged in on my tablet, and we're going to see if the sound is better there, because there should be no distortion. My sound drivers are up to date and everything. Okay, so let's just have a look at the background. So they've given you this context into who you are and what you're about. Essentially, you are working as a journalist for Groves End Media, and the part is all about the theoretical side. As you, as a junior journalist, then when the POE comes, that'll be all the practical side, implementing everything and putting it into practice. So you are answering this assignment in a discussion format. So what is important here, it's not academic essays. They're not asking for you to write full academic essays. They've stipulated for each of the questions, it's discussions. So as I said in the part recording I did previously, you are not expected to write a general statement, thesis statement, and then go into like an academic essay. It is a discussion, and with that, it means that the intro and what have you is different. Guys, give me 1 second to log out of this device and log into the other one, and let's see if the sound is better on that. Give me 1 minute. Right. Is that any better, guys? Because if it's not, then it's just the connection. Brilliant. Okay. Thank you for letting me know, because if you guys hadn't have said anything, I would have just carried on assuming the sound is fine, because we don't know from our side. Okay. We'll stick with the tablet for tonight. Okay. So as I was saying, you are focusing on the concept of a discussion rather than an academic essay. So for each, I'm just speaking to the general concepts that work for each of all 3 questions, and then obviously the dog won't shut up, which works for all 3 of the questions before getting into the nitty-gritty of the 3 questions itself. So for your discussion, you can approach it 2 ways. You can either do a short, I'm using air quotes, even though you can't see me, intro little paragraph, so more like a context paragraph for a discussion, where you kind of give me a bit of context, background into what you're going to discuss, or you can integrate that into your first paragraph. Both of those formats would be accepted. So it's not, like I say, like a traditional essay where I'm expecting an intro and a conclusion and all that kind of thing. In this instance, it's more about that context background, where you can choose if it is isolated or part of your first paragraph. Does everyone understand that? Okay, great. So that is for all 3 questions, because they have stipulated all of them are all discussions, sorry. And then the other thing that I'm going to state now, so that it applies to all 3, is the word count. So for all 3 questions, it says 600 to 800 words. As I've said to you guys before, I can give you a 10% leeway, where you can go up to 880. Okay. Even if you go to say 900, I'm not going to be petty over 20 words. You cannot go below word count, but you can go above
the word count to, let's say, 900, just to make it rounded. But if you're going below the 600 word count, chances are that means you are leaving out crucial information. So please make sure that you stick to that. I know it is a low word count. I know it can be difficult to get our thoughts to be succinct. Oh, sorry, am I thinking of the wrong? Oh, sorry, it is 600 to 1,000. You're correct. Thank you. So 1,100. Sorry, the one I was doing earlier today was 800, the other brief I was setting for the students. So 1,100 words is the maximum you can do, not below 600, but you can go up to 1,1. And like I was saying, the reason is not to be difficult or mean or anything, but more just to force you to think about what you're writing, looking at your sources, and making sure that you are not rambling on about concepts where you can be more succinct about them. So please just be cautious with that, and don't try submit 1,500, 1,600 words and think that I'm not going to notice, because I will notice. I do know what 1,000 or 1,100 words are. You are looking at approximately 2 pages. For those that maybe have more paragraphs and stuff, maybe 2.5. But as I said in the group, it's not about the page number, it's about the word count. So if you're getting to 1.5 pages and your word count is sitting at like 800, that's absolutely fine if you feel you have sufficient information. Okay. So just be careful when researching and looking up information. Okay. The other thing which it doesn't stipulate is the number of sources. So how many sources you should have per question. But what it does say is, oh no, sorry, a minimum of at least 5 academic sources for this part. So what that means is it's not stipulating 5 per question, it's stipulating 5 overall. Okay, so 1 is obviously your textbook, and then you need to include at least 4 other sources. I would say that you will need more than 1 other additional source per question. I would aim for probably 3 to 5 sources per question personally, to make sure that you have enough information for the examples that they want. All right, is everyone clear on that? About the number of sources you need? Cool. Thank you guys. Okay, so let's have a look at question 1. All right, it says, so now, what else I must stipulate? So obviously it's 30, 30, 40 in terms of mark allocation. So question 1 and question 2 will have a little less depth than question 3. So when you are looking at, how much depth and how much info you must have, just make sure that question 3 is the one that has the most depth out of the 3 questions. Okay. So let's look at question 1. It says, at training, you learn that it is important for you to understand the history of the journalism industry in South Africa. The course focuses on understanding the journalism industry during the apartheid era and how that period has shaped the industry today. So journalists at Groves in Media are required to learn this, as this is what sets the stories that they produce apart from the rest, because they have context. So at the end of the session, you are given the task to write a reflection on what you have learned about this. All right. So what is important here is that even though they have put you into the scenario where they're telling you to write a reflection, what I do not want from you guys is I feel looking back, I don't want that personal aspect in this, because it is an academic essay. What they are getting you to reflect back on is basically looking back at learning unit 1. That is the way you've got to look at it. So you need to look back at the content that you have learned, and then you are putting that into context for me. That way, it means I can see that you understand what the past has done for the present. Everyone clear on that? No personal content, no self-reflection type thing in this question. Okay. Just because if you did that, you would lose marks, which I don't want. All right. So now let's have a look how these 30 marks are structured or how they're broken up. So the first thing is you're going to write a discussion in which you discuss the journalism industry during the apartheid era by identifying laws and restrictions placed on the media. Now, as a lot of you have noticed, there isn't a lot of information, for example, on set laws and restrictions in the textbook. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to highlight this as I was going. Okay, there we go. So I understand that, normally it's taken all directly from the textbook, but in this instance, we're wanting you to do a bit of further research and have a further understanding more than what the textbook can provide. So for this particular question, what is important is the structure, because what they're wanting is the discussion on the journalism industry, okay? And then what they are wanting is you to include 3 examples of laws and restrictions placed on the media during apartheid. And that's the other 20 marks. So as I said in the previous recording, how I would think about it is breaking down the laws and restrictions into 3 sections, and with each of them being worth about 10 marks each. That's including context, background, joining sentences, all that kind of thing. But the idea here is that when you talk about the journalism industry during the apartheid era, I would focus on particular aspects such as propaganda, restrictions, censorship. Go with maybe some key themes or key concepts that you can find a law or restriction that speaks specifically to it. So the example like I used in the previous recording is the one where there are particular sorry, my husband was coming to ask if I needed a microphone. So the idea here is during the apartheid era, the media weren't allowed to write or report on those in the opposing political parties. Okay, so the idea here is that that would be your law, your restriction. Okay, let's call that a restriction. It was a law as well, so it depends if you find the specific law or not. So your context, your background would be that the media during the apartheid era had many restrictions or laws in place that caused limitations to the information that was presented, such as, and then you give the name of this law, you give me the theory, tell me what that law is about, okay? So you're identifying it, and then you're giving me the example, you're explaining the process and what happened there. So the fact that they were limited, that information got redacted, that stories would be released that had big chunks missing out of it, that journalists were not producing accurate, truthful information, that different race groups were getting different information, and so on. So the idea here is that, as you've put there, Taylor, context, giving me the law and the restriction, what the impact of that was, and what is important is to relate your example, your discussion back to that theory. Guys, I put a lot of weighting on your discussion rather than just the regurgitation of a textbook. I want to see that you understand what you are telling me. So you want to show me that the media couldn't tell us everything that was going on during apartheid. This is how it happened, and this is the importance or the significance of this. So because this was put into law, it meant that if a journalist went against it, they were exiled, imprisoned, killed, blacklisted, whatever it may be. So you are painting the picture. A discussion is about that deeper meaning, about that deeper understanding. You're not just describing where you just, outline the facts or just present the facts. This is your understanding being presented or shown through the content that you have researched and the way in which you show it to me. Does that make sense? Yeah, Robin, go for it.
Sorry, just to
Sorry, I can't hear you at all. Do you want to try again? So Taylor, you can either use the law as the example if you can find further information to support it. So an example of where journalists is focusing how they were limited, or you can give some proof of it, even better. Yeah, Robin, go for it. Let's hope it
Sorry, let me
works.
try that again. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry, that must have been my headset giving me problems. I just wanted to confirm and just make sure that I understood that correctly for the layout of question one. So we'll do the discussion and then the three laws and the three examples for those laws, right?
Yeah, so so you can structure it like that if you want to do the discussion and then the examples. I would personally break it down into three. So I would integrate your discussion and your examples. Do one, do two, and do three. And for each of those, have discussion on them. Rather than having an isolated discussion and then the examples, your flow will show a lack of understanding if you break it into those two separate entities. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. So basically discussion application, discussion application.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect, thank you.
Pleasure. So the idea, guys, is that should see your understanding of what was going on during the apartheid era through your discussion and those examples, not just by you regurgitating the textbook back to me more than anything else. All right. Questions on question one? Yeah, Roxanne, go for it.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thanks. So basically with question one, what I'm trying to understand is, so basically you would have say for instance, the three laws or restrictions. Like for instance, um, it would be like, the Censorship Act,
Yeah,
28 of 1931. So that would be
yeah.
one of them. Or you could go to broadcasting. There was an act of that as well as the Internal Security Act, right? So then, would we
Yes.
then go with each of those? Say, for instance, you choose three of those different laws, and then you give an example. Let's say, for instance, like information I found out of the Publications Act. The research
Mm-hmm.
I've done is with regards to schooling. So then, can I
Yes.
use the schooling as an example?
Yes, yeah, you could use that as an additional example to support your discussion on the certain law
Mhm.
or restriction put in place.
Okay, and then also within the context that we give in the beginning, because my understanding was it would basically be like where you are explaining the background of how journalists were treated with
Mm-hmm.
regards to the banning, the censorship, them being
Mm.
arrested. So I thought maybe in
Yes.
the context, just tell me if I'm on the right track. So, in the
Yeah.
context of it, we would explain the experiences that the
Mm-hmm.
journalists have, and then I would relate it to the three acts that I've chosen, explaining or the law, explaining that, and then giving an example, like for instance, the schooling.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that context that they're giving, that's for that 10 marks. I would,
Hmm.
if I was the one writing it, I would rather than doing just one solid context thing, I would break it up per law or restriction. So if you
Okay.
want, if your brain works better, that you write the context on its own first, and then
Hmm.
the discussion on the three examples. That's
Yeah.
absolutely fine if you structure correctly. If I was a student personally, I would break up that context into the start of each of those laws. So giving the
Okay.
context on, say, censorship, explaining
Hmm.
what censorship was about during there, and then give the Censorship Act, for example. So
Okay.
I would personally interact it like that.
Okay.
But
Okay, no, that's
like I
understood.
said, yeah, if your brain works better with giving the context first and you think that's how you're going to present your argument the strongest, then I'm all for it.
Okay. Okay, now that helps a lot. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Carrie-Anne, and the rubric, it says students provide more than 3 examples. Yeah, listen, the minimum is 3. If you give me more than 3 and you stay within word count, I'm never ever gonna penalize you guys for taking the time to research in my subjects, because that's a good thing. So if you have been able to find additional stuff and it adds to your argument, and that as long as you've got the minimum, I'm always happy. But if you've gone overboard and gone and found 20 additional sources and your word count sitting at 2,000, then we've got some issues. But again, it's not because I don't want to praise good research. It's because it's part of the academic learning process. And I know I hate it myself. I always push the word count even when I'm a student, and then I get shouted at by my colleagues who are my lecturers. So I totally get it. Okay. All right. Roxanne, do you have another question? Just your hand still up. I just want to make sure, because it's not letting me clear it. Okay, cool. All right. Any other questions with question 1? No, please don't stress. I just wanted to make sure I didn't leave you hanging there. So now I give the law that I explained, give an example, how that would affect the journalist. Do I have to go and find an article from the part and find an article from today? No. You don't need to do that, Taylor. So what is interesting about the question is they've talked about how it's they mention about impacting today, but if you look at the wording of the actual question, they are not asking you to discuss the journalism industry at all today. It's only about the past. So if you find an article in your research that you think is going to help, add it in. If you only speak to the set laws and censorship and you find information about that, those are your examples. So that is absolutely fine, because there's only so much information that you can find. There is a lot out there, but I don't expect you to go and find tons of articles. There's not that many publications that have put their information online post-apartheid, from the apartheid era. So it's only if you find something that supports it. So there are some journalists like Raymond Joseph and Guy Berger and all of those guys that they have spoken about being journalists today, looking at the past. So Raymond Joseph is one of the articles. He wrote a whole thing, and it's one of the articles I uploaded onto the announcements on VC Learn for you guys. And that's a journalist's first-hand account of. So he was an apartheid journalist and still is a prominent journalist today in the Cape. So there might be those kinds of insights that you can get, but I don't expect it the whole way through. Right. Other questions? Seeing as it's already 20 to 7. So I just want to be able to get onto the other questions for you guys. I think obviously this one being the past is a little bit trickier than the other ones. Okay. Any other questions from the rest of the class? We good to go? Guys, I must also just stipulate, because I've had a couple of people ask me to look at drafts of their work to check they're on the right track on that. Unfortunately, I don't look at drafts of assessments and what have you. There are a lot of you that I'm lecturing. There is, it takes a lot of time looking at those drafts. I know some lecturers do choose to look at drafts. I would rather answer lots of questions than look at drafts, because often when you get me to look at drafts, what's happening is you're not trusting yourself, you're not trusting your own instincts, and you also then rely on my answers rather than looking at the work yourself and going, have I done this correctly? And I don't want to put you at a disservice. That's just my personal view. Again, every lecturer will be different, but I much prefer to answer questions and guide you through the process. So sometimes, you know, someone will send me something and I'll say, well, what do you think? It's not me being lazy. It's not me not being supportive. I want you to be the ones who think it through, not me, because you need that for JRN and you need it for your portfolio. Okay, so please understand it's not me being difficult or rude or nasty or any of those things. I want you to be the one working through your content. Is everyone on board with that? Does everyone understand? Before I move on to question 2. Okay. I know it feels harsh in the moment when you're busy doing your assignments, but I don't want to spoon feed you more than anything else. Okay. All right, let's have a look at question 2. So it says, one of the editors at Groves End Media gave a presentation on representation in the context of the media. Her presentation includes examples from Africa and Europe. At the end of her presentation, she shared how this was intentional. The point of the exercise was to see if you understood representation in the context of South Africa, because obviously how we represent ourselves and certain aspects of society is different to the rest of the world. So you're divided into breakaway groups and asked to discuss this. Again, you are put into the narrative, but I do not want you in the narrative. So you're going to write a discussion in which you discuss South Africa's, that's the wrong thing. That's not what I wanted, sorry. And that was probably horrible for your ears. So you're going to write a discussion in which you discuss South Africa's media's representation of gender, race, ethnicity, age, identity, and class. And you're going to discuss any of these 2. All right. So again, they're asking for 3 real-life examples of the representation from the South African media. So what is critical for this question is that your examples have to be essay-based. I know there are so many more examples from overseas, whether it's how they represent us or how they represent these different aspects of society, but what we need is South Africa reflecting South Africa. So if I think about it, if I think about all the stories that go out on a daily basis, there is a lot to do with representation and a lot to do with with particular groups in this list. So there is enough for you guys to find good South African examples. So let's just break this down again. Now, I would say, yeah, Nando's is awesome, Roxanne. Nando's is a great example. So remember, guys, is that when we're talking about South African media, it is any form of media, adverts, TV shows, newspapers. They've just said South Africa's media. So they haven't stipulated print media, digital media, anything like that. So as long as it's a South African representation, it will be accepted. But in terms of the structure, yes, Taylor, it's got to be stuff that has been posted. So stuff that has gone live. So again, newspapers, magazines, radio, ads, social media, Netflix shows, any of those kinds of things you can draw on for this particular question. The idea here is to look at how South Africa's media represents these different societal groups, but then obviously you're going to focus on 2. So I would do the same thing as I said earlier, where I would break it into 3. I would first have a short paragraph talking about media's representation of groups within society or within South Africa. I would do maybe just a short paragraph speaking about representation in general. Okay. And then Avantika, I'll talk to that now. So I would do like I say, a general discussion on representation in South African media. And then what I would do is, and the focus of this discussion will be on, and then tell me which two you're going to discuss. So I would give just a general background in terms of representation, and then you focus on two. Now, again, it's about that theory, discussion, application, or theory, application, discussion, examples. The idea is to make sure you're constantly referring your theory to your application and discussion, and vice versa, because I need to see you and your brain connecting the dots, so I don't have to connect the dots for myself. The idea here is I should never be left asking more questions than you answering them. So I can't fill in your assignment on my knowledge, because then I can't give you marks for it. Okay. So with regards to the examples, you can choose to do two on one of your groups, or you can do one on, let's say if you chose gender and race, for example, you could do one on gender, one on race, and one that speaks to both. Or you could do two on gender, one on race, two on race, one on gender. I don't mind, as long as there is discussion, and as long as, even when you are talking about two examples for one group, you need to talk about them individually. You need to speak about different aspects. So it could be, for example, gender, it could be on heteronormative gender representation. It could be on non-binary representation. It's got to be different, okay? And then when you're doing that, speak to that particular aspect. And also, like I said in the recording, you can speak to positive or negative. Don't only speak to negative. We tend to gravitate to negative representation, but it can be positive or negative. I would have at least one positive to two negative, or two positive, one negative. I would just have balance. So in terms of referencing the Nando's ad, a lot of the Nando's ads have been, they either, you can, when you go search the images, they will connect to the Nando's webpage, or there's a lot of analysis of Nando's ads. So you would then go and link it to a page which does an analysis of that ad. You can include, so going on Chantal's question, you can screenshot anything. You can include images. You can either have screenshots or image one or what have you. I would integrate those into your essay. If you are referring to, say, the Nando's ad, you then would need to say, as seen in image one, and then you discuss it. Okay, so you wouldn't need to then necessarily find the exact source of it, but you would reference it from the web page that you find it on. So you do Google image search, then click on that, visit the page, and it'll take you to where that original image is. And a lot of the ads have had some form of analysis or mention or discussion on news sites, on social media sites, and all that. So then you can incorporate that into your assignment. Okay. Questions? Please ask away. Rest of you, sorry about the chirping in the background. It's mommy talking to baby for the first time. So any questions with regards to question 2, guys? There is no such thing as a stupid question. There's no such thing as a small question or big question. I just want to make sure everyone feels comfortable with the question. I feel this one is not quite straightforward and nice, and because it is speaking on media today, there's a lot of stuff you can find on it. What I would say is please aim for things that are 2020 and above for your examples. Try the newer the examples, the better. And there's a lot out there, especially with gender and race and all the Theresa May going and putting out dodgy ads and representation, all that. That's good, Taylor. I think this one also connects with comms and psych and everything, so I think that's why this one is also a bit easier for you guys. Okay, let's look at the last one, question 3. Okay, so it says that Gravesend Media prides itself on how it has remained relevant in the social news market. Okay, awesome. During training, you learn that things are not like they used to be. Surprise, surprise. The team is facing challenges in this space, and they are looking for new ways which can help the publication. So they're trying to become tech forward, digitally savvy, trying to remain active in a very fast-paced environment. Okay. They've assigned a task team to investigate this matter. Okay, surprise, write a discussion where you suggest any 3 strategies that Gravesend Media can apply to stay relevant in a social news market. So staying relevant in a digital environment. Now, what is important here, guys, and I did say this in the other recording, you do not have to use strategies that are only from the textbook. The textbook is from 2018. That is 6 years ago. All right, so it was written in 2017 and 2018. Please, if you find things that are more relevant to today, whether it be in terms of representation, whether it be in terms of newer technologies like TikTok, with the prevalence of Instagram, all that kind of thing, please use it. So use what you want in terms of the textbook, but also feel free to use other examples. The other way that you can integrate the textbook while still having other examples is by using the background theory from that, and then you can find 3 strategies that are completely new. I don't mind, as long as you integrate the textbook in some way, especially with the background stuff, then you are okay. All right. Now, how this question is different to the others is that there are 3 parts to this rather than 2, so it ends up being 4 parts instead of 3. So let me just, oh damn it, I did it again. Sorry, I keep doing the pen instead of the brush, and the brush does it like a highlighter. Okay, so now again, use those 10 marks for the background, the context, in highlighting or speaking to specific scenarios. So the background to the strategy. Then what it says here is apply the strategy to the given scenario. Now, guys, that given scenario is any information they've given you about Gravesend Media in the entire document. So there is obviously the scenario given in question 3, but you're able to draw in anything that speaks to the context of the brief. So you can draw that in if it helps you. If it's not going to help you in any way, don't draw it in, only bring in question 3. It purely depends on your approach, and I don't mind what you do. Okay, again, it's not about me, because this isn't a like set theory thing like specific theorists or brain processes or whatever it might be. I have to give you a bit of academic freedom within reason. So if you can give me a strategy that makes sense and is relevant, then I can't mark you down for that. Okay. So again, break it into 3. So the 3 different strategies, applying it to the given scenario, and then again, including 3 examples where you have observed these strategies being implemented successfully. So what they're wanting, and find examples of where publications have successfully used the digital environment to increase their sales, increase their viewership, readership, whatever it may be. And online, you will actually be able to find examples to support this. No, 1 each. So 3 examples total, 5 marks for each example, 1 per strategy. Again, if you want to draw in more because you find some really interesting stuff, absolutely fine, but at least 1. Okay. So what is also important here is it does not stipulate South African examples. So you can draw international examples here. So you can pull in something that a US publication has done, an Australian publication has done, anything like that. That is absolutely fine because they have not stipulated has to be South African. But again, you can incorporate screenshots, discuss how it's been successful. Some publications would have put out their reach in terms of print versus digital. Maybe they have actually spoken about their shift to the digital environment. That's the kind of examples that we want. All right. Questions? Any questions at all for question 3? All good. Rest of you? Yes, Nicoletta, that is absolutely fine, but then obviously you would need to still have an additional example to make your 3. Oh, my dyslexia reads over typos, don't stress. Not when it comes to marking, surprisingly, though. But in this kind of reading, it does. But in marking, it hones it in, looks for it. I'm sorry. It's like a little editing machine. Yeah, so if you find an example that works for more than one, then that is great. Because obviously then, again, you can go into further discussion. All right, questions as a whole, everyone. Robin, you can, it's not needed. But if you like doing that, again, it's not going to lose you marks. It's not going to gain you marks either, to be honest. But if it helps your writing process, I'm not going to tell you no, because for some people, it's strategies like that that help them with the work that they're doing. If something was going to negatively impact your marks, guys, I would be honest and tell you, because there's no point me keeping it to myself and letting you suffer. Right. Any other questions? Which shows great leaps regarding keeping room social news world. Ah, that's awesome. Yeah, see, that's perfect because then it can bring in different strategies and be relevant. So that's awesome when you find nice sources like that. Okay, guys, if there are no other questions, then that's us done for tonight in this NSS. I hope it's been helpful. And like I said, if you are struggling with something, don't send me drafts, send me questions, and I will help you through that process. Okay. I'm more than happy to answer on WhatsApp. And, you know, I will help make you think. Okay. I'm so glad, guys. Thanks, everyone. I'll chat to you all soon, I'm sure. Okay. Bye, guys. Oh, hold on, Taylor, let me see what you say. So we can explain the strat, then how another company found using the strat was, and how a company can use it. Yes, Taylor, that's perfect. Okay, great, guys. Chat to you soon.